Previously on Thomas's Magical Adventures, Thomas finally gets a branch line and gets to pull his very own coaches called Annie and Clarabel. But now, Gordon has to collect his own coaches. What will happen now? Well, the story continues right now. Episode 16, Troublesome Engines. Henry and Gordon were lonely when Thomas left the yard to run his branch line. They missed him very much. They had more work to do and had to fetch their own coaches. They didn't like that. James grumbled too.
We get no rest! We get no rest!
The 3 engines complained. The coaches grumbled too. You're lazy and slack, you're lazy and slack, they answered. Altogether, the engines were causing the Fat Controller a great deal of trouble. The big stations at both ends of the line each have a turntable. The Fat Controller had made them so that the tender engines can be turned round, because it's dangerous for them to go fast backwards. Tank engines like Thomas, Percy and Rosie don't need turntables. They can go just as well as backwards as forwards. But to hear Gordon talk, you would have thought that the Fat Controller had given him a tender just to show how important he was.
You don't understand, little Thomas.
What don't I understand, Gordon?
We tender engines have a reputation to keep up. It doesn't matter where you go, but we are important. And for the Fat Controller to make us shunt trucks, fetch coaches, and go on some of those dirty sidings, it's not the proper thing.
Edward's a tender engine and he never complains.
Edward is a little engine and not as important as me.
Looks like someone woke up on the wrong side of the shed.
He's been sleeping on the wrong side of the shed his whole life.
Arrived at the Tamiras, Gordon waited till the passengers had got out. Then, groaning and grumbling, he shunted his coaches to the other platform for Henry's train.
Next time, Henry, fetch your bloody coaches yourself.
Now you know how I feel when I have to fetch your coaches. Sheesh.
Gordon then ran backwards to the turntable for his next train.
Disgraceful.
The turntable was in a windy place close to the sea, and if he was not on it just right, he would put it out of balance and make it difficult to turn. Today, Gordon was in a bad temper, and the wind was blowing fiercely. His driver tried to make him stop in the right place, but Gordon wasn't trying. The fireman tried to turn the handle, but Gordon's weight and the strong wind prevented him.
It's no good. Your centre upsets the balance. If you were a nice tank engine, you'd be alright. Now you'll have to pull the next train backwards. Look, Rosie, there's a new tank engine!
Don't be silly, Percy. It's only Gordon back to France.
Oh, I feel so stupid. I just hope Thomas doesn't see me like this.
Hello, Gordon. Plain tank engines. Sensible engine. Take my advice, scrap your tender and have a nice bunker instead.
Gordon said nothing.
Take care, James. You might stick too.
No fear, Gordon. I'm not so fat as you.
James, hoping not to stick, stopped on just the right place to balance the table. It can now swing easily. Gordon arrived in time to see everything.
Look at me, Gordon. James is the champion of the turntable. What the? Oh dear. Help! I can't stop! Oh! I feel quite sick! Quite sick!
Well, well, are you playing magic roundabouts?
Poor James, feeling quite giddy, rolled off to the shed without a word. That night, the three engines had an indignation meeting.
It's shameful to treat tender engines like this. I have to go backwards so people think I'm a tank engine.
I spin round like a top and everyone laughs at us.
And to add to that, the fat controller makes us all shunt in dirty sidings.
Ugh. Listen, you two.
He whispered something to the others.
We'll do it tomorrow. The fat controller will look silly.
The engines had decided to go on strike. The next morning, the fat controller sat in his office, listening to the noise outside. The passengers were angry.
There's trouble in the shed, sir.
He said it.
What kind of trouble, Station Master?
Henry's sulking, there's no train, and the passengers are saying this is a bad railway. Again.
Indeed! We cannot allow that!
He found Gordon, James and Henry looking very cross.
Come along, Henry. It's time your train was ready.
Henry's not going. We won't shunt like common tank engines. That was Thomas's job. We are important tender engines. You fetch our coaches and we will pull them. Tender engines don't shunt.
Oh, really? We'll see about that. Engines on my railway do as they are told.
He hurried away in his car to find Edward.
The yard has never been the same since Thomas left to run his branch line.
Edward was shunting.
Relieve those trucks, please, Edward. I want you to push coaches for me in the yard.
Thank you, sir. That will be a nice change. I haven't shunted coaches in a long time.
That's a good engine. Off you go then.
So Edward found coaches for the three engines, and that day the trains ran as usual.
Controller's pet.
But next morning, Edward looked unhappy. Gordon came clunking past, hissing rudely. Bust my buffers! What a noise!
They all hiss me, Rosie. They say tender engines don't shunt. And last night they said I had black wheels. I haven't, have I, Rosie?
No, Edward, you have nice blue ones and I'm proud to be your sister. Something has to be done with those three. Rosie hurried to the big station to tell the fat controller what Edward had said.
Oh, for God's sake! Ugh. Those three have been nothing but trouble since Thomas got his branch line.
So I guess you could say the Troublesome engines.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
Something has to be done with Gordon, James and Henry, sir. They're causing chaos and disruption.
You're quite right about that, Rosie. Quite right indeed. And besides, from what I've seen, tender engines do shunt. But all the same, I want you to tell Thomas, Percy and Edward to meet me here tomorrow morning.
Yes, sir! So Rosie told Thomas, Percy and Edward about the meeting. Next morning, Thomas was the last to arrive.
The Fat Controller sent for me. I expect he wants help.
What did he want us for anyway, Rosie?
He didn't say. He just told me to tell you to meet here.
Shh! Here he comes!
Well done, Thomas. You've been quick. Listen, Henry, Gordon and James are sulking. They say they won't shunt like common tank engines. So I have shut them up and I want you both to run the line for a while.
Common tank engines indeed. Oh, we'll show them.
What about me and Percy, sir?
You two will help too.
Yes, sir!
Edward and Thomas worked the main line, greeting each other as they passed by. Percy and Rosie passed along the branch line. Thomas was anxious about Annie and Clarabel, but both engines promised to take care of them. There were fewer trains, but the passengers didn't mind. They knew the 3 other engines were having a lesson. Gordon, James and Henry were cold, lonely and miserable. They wished now they hadn't been so silly. A few weeks later, Annie and Clarabel were beginning to miss Thomas more than ever. Rosie, when is Thomas coming back? I don't know, Annie. When the big engines have learned their lesson, I guess. Why? Are you two missing him? Yes, we are. We go way back. He found us in an old shed and put us back in service. This is the first time we've been without our cute little tank engine friend. You really love him, don't you? We do. Very much. Thomas was missing Annie and Clarabel too.
How long has it been since we've been away from the branch line, Edward?
About 2 weeks. Why'd you ask?
I miss Annie and Clarabel. This is the last time I've seen them since I found these beautiful coaches.
Sounds like you'll love them.
I do, very much.
Meanwhile, Henry, James and Gordon were miserable. They'd been shut up for several days for being naughty and longed to be let out again. At last the Fat Controller arrived.
I hope you are sorry and understand that you are not so important after all. Thomas and Edward have worked the main line nicely, but I will let you out now if, and only if, you promise to be good.
Yes, sir.
We will!
That's right. But please remember that this no shunting rubbish must stop.
Yes, sir.
He then told Percy, Rosie, Edward and Thomas that they can go and play on the branch line for a few days. They ran off happily to find Annie and Clarabel at the junction. The 2 coaches were so pleased to see Thomas again.
Hello girls, did you miss me?
We did, Thomas. Rosie and Percy have been taking good care of us while you were gone. Rosie even kept us company every night, so we wouldn't be too lonely.
Remind me to thank her.
We will, Thomas. Edward and Percy played with trucks.
Stop, stop, stop!
But the 2 engines laughed and went on shunting until the trucks were tidily arranged. As for the big engines, they went back to work fetching their own coaches and pulling passenger trains.
Good morning, James. Nice weather we're having.
Indeed it is, Gordon. Don't you agree, Henry?
I do, James. But do you know what's better than the weather? Not being stuck in the sheds for several days, of course.
And the 3 engines laughed, and they never went on strike or complained about being too important to shunt trucks or fetch coaches again, because they knew they would pay for it.